The 2010 U.S. Census is underway, and it's up to each and every one of us to make it count. Why is the census so important? Beyond statistics, how does this information help out our region? And why is it important to have an accurate count of not just U.S. citizens, but also non-citizen legal residents, non-citizen long-term visitors, and undocumented immigrants? Tonight, we're taking your phone calls and emails to find answers to all our census questions. I'm Ernie Manous, and this is a special live town hall edition of Houston 8. The first U.S. Census was taken in 1790 and estimated the population of the country at just under 4 million. The 1850 census included questions about social issues such as taxation, churches, pauperism, and crime, and for the first time asked for the names of all members of the household. A slave tally was also introduced that year, but would only be done once more, in 1860. Censuses of the late 19th century included agricultural and industrial schedules to gauge the productivity of the nation's economy. Mortality schedules captured a snapshot of lifespans and causes of death throughout the country between 1850 and 1880. In 1890, tabulating machines were introduced to help speed up processing, reducing the tabulation time from almost a decade to a mere 2.5 years. The 1920 census estimated the population at a little over 106 million people, the first time our population exceeded 100 million. Starting in 1940, thanks to Title 44, the Public Printing and Documents Act, results from the U.S. Census are now held for 72 years to both protect individual privacy and encourage participation by all people residing in these United States. The 2010 census is now underway. What will we learn about our country, our home life, and the effects the recession has had on our population? Joining us tonight are Judge Ed Emmet, Harris County, Gabe Sanchez, U.S. Census Bureau Regional Director, Councilman Al Hoang, City of Houston, radio personality and local businessman Marcus Davis, Sylvia Garcia, Harris County Commissioner and President of the Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials, and the Mayor of the City of Houston, the Honorable Annise Parker. I wanted to welcome all of you here, but now first, tonight we invited all of our audience to also take part in this conversation. So you can send in your questions via email to census@HoustonPBS.org, and you can do that right now and we'll get those on the air. Or you can call us at 713-741-8357. We might put your calls on the air, but depends on where we're at in the conversation, so try and keep up with us. But first, we took cameras out to the street to get some questions from folks just like you. Here's our first question.
Hey, this is Dave from the west side of Houston. I was wondering, how is the census data going to help my business grow?
Marcus, that one's for you.
Well, the census, entrepreneurs use the census numbers in a number of ways. The numbers from the census can help drive sales. It can help to spur business, which of course contributes to the bottom line. It also tells what area needs specific goods and services. So aspiring entrepreneurs can develop their businesses or place businesses in certain areas based on what the data from the census reads.
And how soon do you get the data after this is done being tabulated?
George?
We publish the data on December 31st is when we give it to the president, and then shortly after that it starts to roll out to communities.
Okay. Our next question, I do believe this is for the mayor.
Hi, this question is for Mayor Parker. What kind of transportation projects will be helped by census data here in the city?
Transportation projects. Actually, all sorts of infrastructure projects can be affected by the census, both directly and indirectly. We need to know where people are so that we can try to keep our infrastructure ahead of growth pressures. So we'll determine what parts of the city are growing and not, where we need more underground infrastructure, where we need more roads. It also has to do with how much money we receive from the federal government. As dollars are allocated based on population. So the more population we show, the more access we have to federal dollars being spent in our area.
Okay. Our next question is for Gabe.
Hi, my name is Gloria. How can this lower college tuition?
Education is a primary user of census data because they need it in order to plan the kind of facilities that they need and how they're going to develop. But the major thing that would help the cost is that the federal government distributes funds based on population formula. So if you have in a community X amount of college students, and that helps them plan how much money they would need to provide for things like Pell Grants or other funding like that, or student loans. How many loans do they need to make available in a community? So it really does help the system work smoother as far as the federal services that flow down to communities.
Okay. Judge, this one's for you.
I'm actually asking questions in regards to question 8 and 9. How did the census come to define race and origin?
And before I let you even answer that, I'm going to jump in and just let people know. Question 8 says, is person 1 of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin? Question number 9 is, what is a person's race?
Right. Well, the interesting thing about the census is it's self-identifying. So whoever fills out the form, for example, let's take the Hispanic Latino. You may have a Hispanic surname, but you married into that. So you might fill that out, you might not. And it is a self-identifier, but it's an important identifier simply because our area, for example, is covered under the Voting Rights Act. And so when it comes time to redraw legislative districts and congressional districts, those factors are considered in drawing those districts. So it's important that people fill it out accurately and rightly describe, what their race is as they self-identify it.
Let me ask a little bit more about that. When you say when we redistrict, we need to know this information, why is it important to know what a race is or how somebody identifies themselves when redistricting?
Well, because under the Voting Rights Act, we are required as an area at the legislative level, at city council, commissioners, all of these districts, if you have a certain percentage of the population that is Hispanic, for example, the ideal would be to draw districts that have the potential of electing that number of representatives. The same would be true, for example, if Vietnamese population. If there was enough Vietnamese population to make up a district, then the Voting Rights Act would say you might want to do that. All of it ends up in the courts, and the courts look very, very closely, census tract by census tract, at, what are the races that are identified in those census tracts.
So not just for yourself, but for your community or self-identified community, it's important to do the census.
And one last point. Most of our redistricting, most of the districts we'll draw after this census have to be approved by the courts. And so they will look to this information to see if the legislature drew the districts right, for example.
Okay. Yes, Gabe.
I was going to add, it's also about access to the ballot, because if it is determined that there is enough Vietnamese population or Spanish-speaking population in a certain area, the ballots have to be made bilingually in those languages. So in Harris County, we have a lot of bilingual ballots in Spanish, but we also have a lot in Vietnamese. It's all about access, not only to have fair representation, but also to the polls and to access to your right to vote.
And Gabe, you were going to say?
That information is also used by businesses as well to track the demographic changes of a community. I mean, neighborhoods change all the time, and that information helps you identify, well, do I need to branch into different products to serve the changing community that my business is in? So there's a lot of uses spread throughout, as has been pointed out.
And I guess we're going to get into all these topics a bit more, but we've got a couple more video questions. Here's our next one for the councilman.
Hi, my name is Marta Tristan, and I'm from Houston, Texas, and I have a question. Why should I give more information than the number of people living in my house?
Councilman.
Well, each person is counted. The federal is going to give to the region here is about $1,700 a year. And because of that, it will the fund is going to given to all the community, the library, the infrastructure, the public safety. So you have to give the right number, but we don't want you to exaggerate, and we don't want you to be undercounted. So that's why the information is very important. Actually, my answers supposed to be all the answers
for all the reasons we've already
heard.
Yeah.
We've just discussed recently.
Okay, Gabe?
I was just going to add that the other reason to fill out the entire questionnaire is that the questions there are not something that we just are curious about, that the Census Bureau is curious about. There are things that have been put in there all tied to specific things in legislature or mandates that need to be done. So therefore, if you send back an impartial form, that's just going to generate a visit from a census taker, because we need all of the information on the form. And if you go to the website, it shows what year we started asking the question and how it's tied directly to legislation or funding or a particular law or act that has been passed.
The data is kept confidential for a very long period of time, but there are a lot of genealogists out there, and the census data from the early years that's been released is like a gold mine for genealogists. Someday people will be looking back at this period wanting to know where their great-grandparent lived at a certain time, and we'd like to provide that accurate data for the future.
Okay, and our final question is for the Commissioner.
Hi, my name is Maria Estela Guiniga. I'm from Pasadena, Texas. I have a question for you. I have a lot of friends, they don't have legal papers, and they're so scared to fill out the papers. How they can help you?
Well, first of all, they really do not need to be scared. Every census worker has to take an oath saying that they will not reveal the information, that it's strictly confidential. If they in any way release any information, they're subject to a penalty of $250,000 or up to imprisonment of 5 years. That's pretty stiff. The records are basically sealed. They're put away. They don't give that information to IRS to look for you to pay up any overdue taxes. They're not going to give it to ICE or immigration. They're not going to give it to the FBI. They're trying to hunt down somebody. It is so sacred that it's been known that they don't even give that information to the Secret Service in protection for the President of the United States, because once it's there, it's locked up. Nobody gets it for the 72 years that's been mentioned in your promo. So I think they need to just understand that there's no need to be afraid. It's safe and it's confidential.
Now, anyone at home looking at this panel in front of us realizes we have quite a few heavy hitters here. This must be very important to our region that we could get all of you to come and agree to adjust your schedules to be here to ask the community to do something like this. Why is this so important? I'll start with you, Gabe.
Well, it's a foundation of our democracy. We live in a representative democracy. The census is something that's in the Constitution that we've been doing since 1790, and every 10 years we have to reawaken the importance of it among the community. It's important for all of the reasons you've heard, for federal funding, for representation, and for, as the mayor correctly pointed out, for being part of history. You become part of the fabric of our nation. For as long as we have a country, your census form is there as part of our history forever. So it's really something that it's very important in a tremendous amount of ways throughout the community.
Mayor, I just want to ask you, I read somewhere that the city lost, $400 and some odd million 10 years ago because it wasn't accurately filled out.
The census is about money and it's about power, and Councilmember Hoang mentioned that up to $1,700 per person per year. So that's spread out over times 10, but between the census tallies, can be lost when we undercount somebody. And our undercount was significant 10 years ago, and hundreds of millions of dollars lost to the region. We're a donor city and a donor state, and that should bother people. We send more money to Washington than we ever get back. And one of the ways to get that money back is to show that we have the population here. The power issue is that Texas will gain at least 3 congressional seats, perhaps a 4th congressional seat. We have to prove that we have the population here to deserve those extra seats. And then once the state population, it's where in the region do those seats go? And we'd like to see greater representation here. And I was thinking, as the commissioner was talking about the need to enumerate, this program will be shown over the Easter weekend. And we should remember that for Christians, the Christmas story, that was driven by the census.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph was returning to his home village for the census. Census is not a new thing.
Right, and I can't guarantee anything as wonderful will happen this time we take the census, but it's still important that we fill it out. Marcus?
I wanted to comment on something the mayor said. The important thing to me is that these are tax dollars. When we use the numbers $240 million or $400 million or $1 billion, that's not just some number that's thrown out there. That's the tax dollars that hard-working Americans go to work for every day, that's collected in a pool, and the opportunity to receive those funds back in your district is our greatest opportunity, and that's by filling out the census and making sure that the roads in your area are taken care of, making sure that the health clinics in your area are equitably funded, making sure that the things that you request and desire to have in your neighborhood get to your neighborhood, but you have to stand up and be counted in order for it to happen.
Now, hold on. Okay. Comments is that in the Census 2000, I recognized that the Asian was undercounted as well as the Hispanic community too. And I know that many Asians did not fill out the application because they fear that they had a bad relationship with their government in the past, and they think this is something that is intrusion into their privacy. So I just want to make sure that they know this time they should fill it out. It's not an intrusion to their privacy. This is something that is going to help their family in the city and also our region. So in the year 2000, suppose they said that the Chinese is only about 25,000 in the city of Houston. And I know a lot of Chinese leaders say, well, laughed out loud, I know the Chinese myself, 25,000 people already. Yeah. So we were undercounted tremendously. And that was the reason why we lost about $400 million for the last 10 years.
Now, what we have said early on is, I'll get to you one second. I just want to say, we have called this an electronic town hall meeting. We've asked people if you want to email in your questions, and they are coming in right now. You can do that at census@HoustonPBS.org. Or if you want to call in, we are taking calls at 713-741-8357. And we have our first caller on the line with us. Caller, what is your name and what is your question?
Hi, thanks for taking my call. My name is Robin Lepore. And I understand all of the good things that the information on the census can help bring to the communities. But my question is, am I legally obligated to fill the entire census out, or am I only obligated to fill out the information on the names and the number of people that live in my household?
Thank you, Robin. Judge, what do you think? You're going to toss it over to Gabe.
That's a census guy question.
Yes, the Constitution instructs the census to be conducted in a way that by law shall be determined. Law has determined that these are the questions, and it is mandatory to complete the questionnaire. Having said that, we don't we're not in the business of fining people or putting people in jail. That's not what we're about. We're more about educating people on the importance of this and getting them to cooperate. In the end, if you don't fill out all the questions, someone will come to your house to try to collect the rest of the information.
Okay, then help me with this one, because we've done shows on this in the past, and our research has said that, and people's reactions when we ask about this are, constitutionally, all the government has a right to ask for is the number of people living in the homes. That the questions have changed and shifted over the years, but constitutionally, all people have to answer is how many?
Well, again, I'm not a constitutional attorney, and there's definitely a lot of debate on the Constitution, not just about the census. But as has been interpreted by law, we have to conduct the census every 10 years in the manner that the government sees fit. The questions have been approved by Congress, and we conduct it every 10 years. And I can tell you that this is the simplest census form we've had in anybody's lifetime who's filling out a census. It's only 10 questions. There is nothing on here that can hurt you. We don't ask for immigration status. We don't ask for Social Security numbers. We don't ask for bank accounts. It's the simplest form we can make it and still comply with the mandates that we have for the programs that we have.
But you do ask name, you do ask phone number, and I know a lot of people worry as soon as they see the phone number question.
We do. And I promise you, the chamois people will not call you based on the information you give us.
I think some people prefer they call than the government call.
That is correct. The reason we do that is because, unfortunately, unfortunately, as simple as we try to make it, there is often errors in the form. If you put down the names for 3 people, but you list that you have 7 in the household, we would much rather call you and correct the problem than having to send someone out, because that really gets into taxpayer waste if we actually have to send someone out.
So if I only fill this out partially, I am still going to get a visit?
Correct. We must, by law, get a questionnaire back from every household.
Completely filled out?
Yes.
Marcus, you were going to say?
While it may be arguable that it's constitutionally right or wrong to impose those or enforce that, the idea that it's good for the person that's filling out, it's good for the city, it's good for the community, can't be dismissed. While you may debate that I'm only required to fill out half of it or only required to, you can't debate the idea that getting tax dollars in your community to benefit your community, that's not up for debate or argument.
And we do not, I can't stress that strongly enough. You can Google anything, but you can't Google my census form from 10 years ago. We have strict confidentiality for these things. As soon as we get the name, if the form is correct, we strip the name. We only use the demographics. We do not publish your name in any way or your phone number or any personally identifiable information.
Okay, our next call is on the line. It is Monique, and I promise I'll get to the emails in just 1 second. Monique, what is your question?
Yes, I have a question for the panel. I wanted to know if after the census is taken, if it's going to influence our school system. You know, for example, like if there's a larger Hispanic population, does that mean that y'all need to have more bilingual teachers in your schools? Or if you need to, like maybe build more schools?
Good question. Thank you very much. I'll go to the judge on this one.
Sure, that's exactly the type of purpose that the census is for. You know exactly where people live, so the school district will be able to access that information, know where the population is. They can tailor their school system to reflect that population. That doesn't mean they can always get the bonds passed to do that, but it's nevertheless, that is part of it. And they can also begin to get an understanding of the demographics of the region. So, yeah, the school district is a prime user of census information.
I am assuming you're not just taking this census when it comes, but you look at the back census and you are charting the trends and the shifts and all of that to help predict future also with it, correct?
Well, I think certainly the social scientists look at that. I know here in Houston and Harris County we have the Houston area survey that's done every year, and that deals a lot with not only census information but also patterns of belief. So, yeah, the census is something that's used by all manner of people.
This is something that I know the judge is intimately familiar with, but the census helps us make this region safer in a disaster. Right. Is that emergency evacuation? You have to know where the people are in order to know how to get them out, and you may want to address that a little bit.
You got to know how many people hunkered down.
How many people hunkered down? I'm never going to live that line down, I can tell.
At least you got one. Let me go to some email questions that have come in. The first one is, what has the census done to differentiate the various Asian populations? Why are they all lumped together in a single check box of, as they say, Asian, Pacific Islander, other?
Well, the Asian population is not as huge as the Hispanic population or the Caucasian population, and we estimate that we have approximately from 6 to 12% Asian here in Houston and the vicinities. So I believe that is one of the reasons why they only have the box for Asian and Pacific Island, but the question should be answered directly from the census.
You know what? I have got the census in front of me, as does Gabe, and looking at it, it does say that there is Asian Indian, Chinese, Filipino, Vietnamese, Korean, Japanese, Native Hawaiian, Guatemala. It goes on. It is not just Asian, check, other box.
Yeah, it's the real estate on the form is very valuable. I mean, you have to try to fit a lot in and not make it a 23-page form as we've had in the past. We strive for simplicity, and it's very, very contentious process to get the wording right and the categories correct. We follow OPM guidelines, general government guidelines, as well as work with advisors as to what the group would understand. We have race and ethnic advisors that advise us on the wording of the questions and so on to, again, get as accurate a result as possible. We could list a lot. I mean, we're a very diverse country, so we could list a lot of different things on there. We try to do the best we can with the real estate that we have.
Let me take this one to the Commissioner. How will it be decided which programs receive funding after the census is finished?
Well, that will be up to each local government that receives the dollars. I think what's important is to realize that the information that's given to the census stays with us for 10 years, which is why it's got to be accurate, and we make sure everybody's counted so that we can make sure we get enough money back from the federal government. There's no do-overs in the census. I mean, once the numbers are counted, it stays there. So I think what happens is you get the dollars back, and then you look at your data and determine just where you need to put the dollars. So it all works together, and it's there for 10 years.
This made me think, and there's also another question that goes with it. I'll get over to you in one second, but how do we verify we were counted was one question, as another one is how do we know people are truthful when they answer it, which I think kind of plays into this whole thing. Is there any kinds of checks and balances?
Yes, and on the previous answer, I just want to add, you're absolutely right. This is the true head count. I mean, there's estimates that come out in other surveys, but this is the only actual true head count where we go to every single household and attempt to get a count back from each household. There are checks and balances. Obviously, we've been doing this for a long time, so we have quality assurance and quality control programs. We check on unexpected answers. Like, for example, if you have a house that has 3 people and 3 people, and then one that has 27, that house will probably get a visit because that's not what we expected to find. So we have different controls on what the actual listers do and the information that we collect back statistically and actually in the field. But the form it's a legal document, so we do expect people to fill it out correctly.
We have a call holding. Before we go to that, a real quick question. Who is responsible in apartment buildings? Is it the tenants or is it the landlord?
Tenants, we send a questionnaire to every place where people live or could live. So therefore, we do not send it to the building. We send it to apartment A, B, or C.
So
every
you're
single
responsible
place,
for your
yes.
immediate dwelling is what
Correct.
you're responding
for
to.
your household.
Okay. I'll get to you 1 second, but we have Dell on the line. Dell, what is your question? Gail.
Hello.
Let's try Gail.
Gail Baker. My question concerns the simplicity of this year's form. In the past, far more diverse questions have been asked, home, income, etc. And how can as much be determined from a much simpler form? Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're on again.
Sure. In the past, for those of you that remember the last census, we had 1 in 7 households getting what was called a long form, which was 23 pages of very important questions, but obviously questions that people thought were a lot more intrusive. So what we have done for this census is we've made it a short form only, which are the 10 questions that I've mentioned. The other information is collected on a monthly basis through a survey called the American Community Survey. The Census Bureau is a statistical agency for the federal government, so we collect data in a variety of ways through sample surveys. But again, what everybody knows us for is the decennial, which is the 10-year thing, which we've made it as simple as possible.
Marcus, you've been sitting there biting your tongue for a while now.
I just wanted to comment on the question that was asked about how programs will be funded from a government standpoint. In addition to government funding programs, you have to think about the idea that philanthropically speaking, those ventures will be funded by these numbers as well. So those that are looking to give money or want to know where their money is going to, and that the services that they're offering are going to the best place. So that's another way that programs are funded. So we have to consider that as well.
That's one point.
As we talk about all of these ethereal topics related to the bottom line is the important thing is people need to simply fill this out and send it back in.
If you don't want to knock on your door, the person who asked earlier about this being intrusive, the government will follow up. The simplest, easiest, cheapest, if you want to save tax dollars, send it in. Because they hire people to go door to door to those households where we haven't received a form. So that actually wastes money if you don't send it in. And there's a knock on your door. So if you want the government to stay away, fill it out early and get it in the mail.
I have a statistic right here.
More than one